Welcome back, everyone. I have a super amazing author with me today. I'm so pumped for this interview. I first found her on Amazon. I came across her book covers and I fell in love immediately, and I knew straight away I had to get her on. And I'm super grateful that she said yes. So I'm going to introduce the one and only Jessica Wayne. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Fabulous. I'm going to get straight into it. What's it like living in Texas, USA?
I love it. It's definitely hot, and we pretty much only have two seasons. We have either very hot or very cold. And this last winter was definitely a lot colder than I was prepared for being here. We called it the winter apocalypse because it got so cold that we lost power. Water lines froze up. It was just absolutely insane.
Because you got snow and stuff too, didn't you? Which is
Did a
abnormal.
lot of snow. We ended up, so we had sold our house and we're living in a fifth wheel while we were waiting to close on our new house. And so it got so cold that the insides of the windows iced over. So there was a really thin layer of solid ice, like on the inside and the outside of the windows, no matter how hot we kept it. And so when we lost power, we ended up having to scramble to find a hotel because we've got three little kids, and it was awful. It was so cold.
I want to start talking about your books. I want to know where it began for you. What gave you the inspiration for your first book, should I say? And what made you decide to actually have the courage to print your first book? What was the publishing process like for you?
Well, as a kid, I sought escape in books. It was the best way for me to kind of step outside of life and relax. And so I fell in love with the written word at a pretty early age. And I always wanted to write. And my grandma she read everything. And so I would write little stories and give them to her to read. And she would, give me feedback and help me kind of grow. And I ended up was it my junior or senior year of high school? I wrote a short story. The title was absolutely horrendous. But I gave it to my English teacher, and she told me I could see you as a published author one day. I really could see that. And that kind of was the first little seed that maybe I could really do it. But I joined the military. I spent 7 years in the Army. And then when I got out, after I had my first daughter, is when my grandma passed away. And I was like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to publish this book. And so I hit publish on it. It was horrible. I did not have an editor. The cover was one that I made through Kindle. It was so bad. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know that Book Facebook existed. I didn't know anything about that. And I published it. And then I sat there and I waited. And I think it sold like 4 copies. And I'm pretty sure it was all friends and family. But I ended up meeting an author through my sister-in-law, who kind of introduced me to some book groups and gave me some guidance so that I could, spread my wings a little bit. And I just absorbed everything I possibly could from that point on.
So what year was this when you first published your book?
2016, I believe. I think it was 2016.
How long did it take you, firstly, how long did it take you to write that book? So the process from writing it, and I guess you skipped a couple of steps with the editing and stuff.
I guess it's very important ones.
And it's the best way to learn, though. And I think a lot of new authors do. They hit the print button and then they're like, oh, this is so weird. I haven't sold 100 copies overnight. Yep. And that's when reality kicks in, that you have to do all the marketing or things like that. So it's quite interesting that you kind of made a few of those key mistakes straight away, which made you better for it. Because I mean, look how successful you are today for it. How long did it take you to actually write the book?
I want to say I write really fast. And so I think that first book probably took me about a month and a half to write. But I'd been working on that for a while. It was a newly adult version of the one I wrote in high school. So it was like a longer version of that. And that was, it only took me about a month or a month and a half, I'd say. I wrote it on my couch. So
did you feel, when you did start going into the reading and writing group and things like that, and then started learning and researching more, did you initially become overwhelmed by going, oh wow, there's a lot more in this than I realized? or were you more so excited about how much there was to learn and sort of chew off?
I was really intimidated at first, and I started following other big indie authors that I looked up to, and I, paid really close attention to what they were doing and the way that they were talking about their books and all of that. And then I would take class after class after class, and try to figure out how. It was a lot of information, so I was definitely intimidated, but I kind of just took it bit by bit and just tried to absorb a little bit at a time until I could get my bearings.
That's amazing. And then obviously you kept writing while you were going through that. So when did you publish book 2 after book 1? How long was it in between?
So I republished book 1 about 3 months after I had it edited and learned something from that. And then the second book I published was Phoenix, and that was published, I want to say, not quite a year after that. I want to say that one came out in like early 2017. Maybe it was late 2016. Anyways, it was not too long after that. That one has since been rewritten and re-edited and republished multiple times also. But yeah, that one came out a few months after the first one did.
That's amazing. Okay, so one series I really want to ask about, because this was the book covers that absolutely as a reader personally, like it grabbed my attention. I was like, I must read this book. I want to talk about the Vampire Huntress Chronicles. You've only recently published this. You published this one last year, and you've already got like the first, I think it's 4 out, is it, in the series?
Yeah, 5. Books will come out next month.
That's amazing. And I think I saw that you've already got like 6 up to, was it 12 of them? And you've already got them all up for pre-order?
Yeah, I have up through book 12 up for pre-order, and then there will be 3 more books. There's gonna be a total of 15. And those 3, the only reason the pre-orders are not up for that series yet is because I couldn't push it out far enough. And so as soon as I can get those pre-orders up, they'll go up too.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Tell me about the series. So sell it to me. I already know that I need to read it, but tell me about it. Tell me about this world that you've created.
So I had this great, so I took a course from Rebecca Hamilton. I took her publishing mastermind course. I love information. I absolutely love learning. And so I took her class and did some research based on some stuff in it. And I had this great idea for vampires. Twilight, that was my thing when I was in high school. And I was like, this is great. And so I had this idea for this whole big world, but I knew I wanted to make it massive. Like I wanted it to be a place that people could just dive into and live there if they wanted to. And I also knew I wanted to set it in Montana because I love Montana. After this last winter storm, I no longer want to live there, but I love it. It's beautiful. And so I set it, it's like, let's set, a vampire novel in Billings, Montana, because why not, And I also love enemies to lovers. I love the idea of people who are not supposed to be together, the tension that you can get from that. And so I came up with Rainey and Elijah. And Rainey is a homicide detective. She's in her late 30s, which was another thing that I really wanted to push, was because I love reading romance from, younger women's point of view, but having an older character, I really, really was excited about that. And so, she's a homicide detective. She's super snarky, drops F-bombs like she's drinking water, loves Skittles, and has all of these different quirks that make her who she is. And when she crosses paths with Elijah, who she has been raised to hate, and he comes into this picture at a time when her life is literally hanging in the balance, and she's got either, this route to go, or she can trust him and kind of take this way, then it just led to such an explosive plot. I love it. I go through and I reread it, and I'm like, it's so good. And I love them, and they're such real characters. And then I knew I didn't want to let them go right away. And so as I wrote each book, I steadily expanded the characters so that I could continue to push these other characters into different situations and really expand on the world to where it will be something I can write in for as long as I want.
I love that. So the other one, so obviously there is a theme in your covers.
Uh,
So the first three are your red ones, the next three are your green ones. So I'm assuming that are they going on different couples each?
yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so the world will be a total of 15 books, but they'll be broken down in trilogies. And so the start of each trilogy is an entry point to the series. And so that way you can binge the first 3 books and take a break if you want, and then move on to the next 3 without feeling like you have to binge read all 15 to get the full story.
Amazing. What was your biggest obstacle in writing this series? Because writing a 15-book series, obviously they break up in trilogies, but it can be very, I want to say almost intimidating to make sure that you still have all that information and you're sticking to your rules in that world. So what would you say your biggest obstacle perhaps has been writing that series so far?
Definitely honestly, it sounds silly, but the eye colors. The eye colors of the supporting cast has been the most difficult thing for me to track. I can't tell you how many times I've changed Bronwyn's eye color throughout as I'm writing, and I catch it in the final stages of edits. And that has definitely been of all of it, because that was the one thing I didn't even think to write down because I had the picture in my head. And it wasn't, so I got the covers for Bronwyn and Tarnley's trilogy, and I noticed that her eyes were green. And I was like, wait a minute, I should probably check that. And so I went through, and it was like that through the Blood Hunt trilogy. Her eyes were green. And then you get into Curse of the Witch, and I had switched her eye color to brown, but luckily I caught it before I published it. So I was able to run back in and fix it. But that has been probably the biggest headache in writing it.
I'm kind of chuckling because I had literally done this yesterday. And I was like, "That doesn't sound right." And I had to go through to like my first book of the series and go, oh, and make sure. Yeah, so small detail. I love that. How do you find the world building? Because is this your largest series that you've done?
I have a OneNote, and I did a bunch of research into different lore. I decided to go with a Celtic background because I love Ireland, and Scotland. I love the whole. I love it. I have a theme. Tethered Souls, my first book, is set in Ireland, and then this series has Irish ties. I wrote a time travel trilogy in Ireland. Like I love it. And so I went with a kind of a Celtic um, background, but I built my own mythology on it. So I took and I sat down and I brainstormed, okay, well, how could these different creatures come into existence? How would this work? And so I have this whole big backlog, yeah, built for the series so that I can continue pushing it. So I have vampires, shifters, fae, succubus, like all these different creatures that have stemmed from the 3 major supernaturals, which were witches, vampires, and shifters. And so I built it all based on that.
What tips would you offer for those who are wanting to jump into paranormal or into fantasy? What tips would you offer them to make sure that they're staying accountable in their series, to make sure that their world is very tight and the reader can connect with it? What tips would you give?
I would say before you ever write the first book, even if you are just chomping at the bit to get going on it, to sit down and really think about the world and the rules and write everything down and keep it right there with you. I'm obsessed with OneNote. I use it for all of it. And so I would definitely recommend doing that and making sure that you're set up that way. And to not let anybody dictate what type of magic your books can have. Because I take something that someone says can't be done. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this happen because it just seems, it just seems fun. So that's what I would just make sure that you research it and you come up, even if you don't think it's a detail you're going to need later, have it because it makes the world that much more real to you and then to the reader.
So, speaking of worlds, I want to go on a different angle here. You also write under another pen name, J.W. Ashley. You write contemporary romance as well. So, I kind of want to know what made you decide to chop it up and change it in genre, but also why you felt it was so important to go 2 separate pen names with it.
So I originally, when I first released, when I first published, I wrote Tethered Souls, Phoenix, and then I wrote The Charitable Bastard, which was my first stab at contemporary suspense, romantic suspense. And I just kept putting out books, not paying any attention to what genre I was writing. It's like, I'm just going to keep spitting these books out. Since then, I've gone through and I've retitled it. Amazon didn't much care for that title, so I ended up retitling it and splitting it into the two separate pen names. That way I had, if I have fans of J.W. Ashley, then they know they're going to get contemporary romance for me. And then fans of Jessica Wayne will definitely get paranormal and fantasy. But I advertise them both so they can, because I read everything. So I'll read contemporary and paranormal. And then that way they can kind of jump in between the two. But it gave me a break.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you find that contemporary romance, and this is just from personal experience, which is why I asked this question, do you find contemporary romance sometimes easier to write in comparison to paranormal romance, just because it is a lot more heavier with the world building in the paranormal romance?
The world building aspect of it, yes, but honestly, I find contemporary harder to write than paranormal, because the stakes are not quite as high as they are in paranormal. You have this, you have this evil witch that's coming in and she's all powerful and, it's life or death. And then contemporary romance, you can't have that. And so you can have suspense, which is different, a different type of, concern. But as far as that goes, I find it easier to build the tension with paranormal and fantasy than with contemporary.
So what would you say your favorite genre to write is?
Oh, that's hard. I honestly, I love high fantasy. I love my Cambrixian Realm trilogy. I love the world that's there. It's totally 100% mine. I love paranormal romance too. It's definitely up there with it, but there's just something about literally going into a completely different world where the rules are different, the people are different, all of it is different. That is just, there's just something about it that I can't even pinpoint exactly what it is, but the escape that you get with that and that I get with that as I'm writing it, it's totally different than what I get from writing another genre.
Do you have a lot of action in your fantasy?
I do. My high fantasy is a lot of action. It's enemies to lovers too, because I love it. But it's very fast paced. There's not a whole lot of downtime.
How do you go with writing the action scenes? Because, and it sounds like we write very similarly, which is why I'm just asking, because I find after you've written a decent amount of books, that you have to get quite creative in your fight scenes, because you're like, I'm pretty sure I've already had a scenario like this. So how do you articulate what you're writing? Do you YouTube things? Are you secretly a black belt? Like, how do you articulate your fight scenes?
I wish I could say I was secretly a black belt. I have dabbled some in kickboxing. I haven't done it in a while, but I did do a little bit of that. I have done some combatives. And so I definitely drew from that as I get to like the hand-to-hand type fight scenes. I've YouTubed fighting with staffs. I love like watching those videos because there's a scene and I believe it's Blood Captive where she and Elijah are training and she's just totally whooping on him with this staff. And it's just the best thing. And so I definitely will YouTube. If I don't know how I want to explain it, I will definitely look it up. I did look up some fight scenes with swords with my Cambrixian Realm. And I will admit, I absolutely YouTubed the Elijah fight scene from the originals where he's going in the werewolves. I totally YouTubed that too. So just because motivation.
So I'm assuming then, obviously, like speaking of the originals, which is such a good series, and I also love Elijah from that series. Actually, was he a little bit your inspiration maybe for your main character? I just teamed the two together.
Yeah, he was. I love the name Elijah. And as I was going through and choosing names for my characters, I do background research in terms of like say genealogy type stuff. So I want to pick names that meet the character. And I saw that name pop up and I was like, that's the one. That's it right there. And so he played a role in that too.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so excited to read this series. Okay. Now, one massive feat I want to mention is that you are a USA bestseller. So firstly, congratulations. I want to know what book that was for, or books, and how did you find out? How did you celebrate that massive accomplishment?
So I took Tethered Souls, my first ever published book. I put it through another round of rewrites and beefed it up to make it to where I am now, because you grow, you know. And so I wrote it, I rewrote it, and re-edited it and all that good stuff. And it was part of a box set that I was pushing with a bunch of other authors. And I honestly, I worked on that constantly. It was a constant grind to try to hit it. And it was everything I possibly could. I advertised, I marketed, we all did. And so that was the book that hit the list, which I thought was awesome, because it's my first ever published book that hit, you know? Um, and so I just kind of stared at the computer for a while, because I was just like, I don't know what just happened. I don't even know how am I supposed to handle this right now. You know, it was a total shock. And I ate a lot of food that night. That's how I celebrated. A lot of food.
What anthology was that?
Sorry.
What anthology was that?
Midnight Whispers.
I think what year was this?
It was a couple months ago, or not even a couple months ago. It was March last month. It feels like a couple.
I'm pretty certain I've seen that anthology, because I remember seeing it everywhere. So congratulations, that's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, we pushed it. We pushed it really hard. It was definitely a lot of movement. So I was not quite prepared for the undertaking that it would be. I have another book that I'm list aiming with, a solo that I'm going to have the cover reveal that'll drop next month, and I'm so excited about it. So
will this be the start of a new series?
Yes, but it also has, so in my Vampire, because I love spinoffs, I love tying it all together. In my Vampire Huntress Chronicles, in Curse of the Witch, so book 4, you meet Rafferty, who's a fae, who ends up playing a pretty intricate role toward the end of the book. And this is his series, but it's going to be a 7-book series by itself, with he's going to be the sole focus of it. So I'm working on that one too.
What has been your most memorable reader interaction moment?
So my very first signing ever was Hard Rock in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it was back in I don't remember. It was a year or two after I started publishing, I think. Anyway, so I went to the signing, not knowing what to expect. I knew nobody was going to know who I was, because I was, a nobody. And I get there, and this reader brought over a scrapbook that she had made with pages dedicated to every author. And so she had gone on and printed, pictures and stuff, and put it in this scrapbook, and it was going around and having everybody sign it. And seeing my picture in her scrapbook, and knowing that she had taken the time to put this together, and as a way to make us feel special, it made me cry. And I was just like, it felt so, it was so real, and it was so sweet. And I gave her the biggest hug, and she is just one of the sweetest humans. And it just made me feel so good. It made me feel important when I really did not feel super important.
And this is the thing, I love signings, because it really makes you realize, obviously, we engage online all the time. We love social media, we love talking to readers, but when you're at those conventions and you meet people who you've never known before, and that you have that immediate connection because you've written a book and you're sharing something special, it's quite fulfilling and rewarding, I want to say. So that's no wonder you cried.
Oh, I did. So I cried real hard. It was just like, because I was so nervous. I was shaking. I was, like, I don't even know what if nobody comes to my table? Like, I was just so terrified. And she put all of that to rest. Like, she instantly put me at ease. I felt, I am not a nobody. People know me. Like, this is great. And it just felt really, really good.
Oh, I'm glad you had that moment. And there'll be plenty more. Once COVID's all done, you'll be able to do plenty more signings. Yeah. And you've built quite the reader base or fan base now as well. So you'll have to deal with the lineup, the hardship.
I love connecting with people, and which is I'm a super introvert. So if you ever see me in person, I'm very shy at first. I'm very quiet, and then I really kind of open up. And so being able to go to the signings was great because it gave me that, I could be an extrovert for a weekend and hang out and it'd be awesome. But there's connecting with people online. Especially with COVID and everything going on, it makes you feel so much less alone and gives you the motivation to really keep pushing forward when you just kind of want to lay there and not do anything.
What would you say your favorite book has been to write so far, and why? You can only choose one.
I'm gonna say Blood Hunt. I think Blood Hunt was my favorite, and I think it was because for many reasons. It was the start of a brand new series in a brand new genre because I hadn't written paranormal romance before, at least not true paranormal, and it ended up being a bestseller. It totally surpassed any expectations I had whatsoever, and I put everything I had into the book. It took me the longest to write it because I, was doing all my world building, my research, and then I would write a chapter and then I would go back and I would rewrite it all over again until I was happy with it. And which I still do, but it took me longer with Blood Hunt. I'm not really quite sure why, but it did. And the cover's my favorite too. So
It's a beautiful cover. Like, all of them are beautiful covers, but that definitely grabbed my attention. I was like, hello, who are you? What is happening here? What would you say your greatest challenge and your greatest accomplishment for your writing career has been so far?
My greatest challenge was myself. It was getting out of my own head and learning how to how to do something the right way instead of just what was the fastest way. So it takes me a month to write a book. I'm going to get it out in 2 months and then that's done. So that was kind of my mentality for a while. And then I realized that I was doing a disservice to my story and myself. So I went back and really did it right. And that was kind of my biggest challenge, was definitely overcoming myself and learning to be patient when I really didn't want to. And my greatest accomplishment, I think it was, I really think it was Blood Hunt. I think it was having a book that did so well right out of the gate because I had put so much work into the marketing and the advertising aspect of it. I think probably, sorry, my allergies are so bad. I spent probably 2 months just setting up the marketing for it, just setting up the release, booking the tours, making sure I had my post scheduled. And that was I put everything I had into that release, every possible thing. I took a month off afterward. So yeah, Blood Hunt has definitely been my greatest accomplishment. It's my favorite book ever of mine, I think. So
I love that. It sounds like your Blood Hunt really sort of broke the glass ceiling for yourself.
It did.
By the sounds of it.
It definitely did. I can't, I looked it up on Amazon after it had been out for a day or two, I think. And I was screaming and my husband was like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Look at what happened. This is crazy." It was huge for me. And it makes me so happy that people love them as much as I do.
I love that. And you have a Facebook reader group too for that world, don't you?
I do.
What's the name of it?
Jessica's Whiskey Thieves.
There we are. Because you are a lover and advocate of whiskey, aren't you too?
Oh, I am. I love it so much. Yes.
If you had to say, I'm going to make you choose. What's your favorite whiskey?
Oh gosh. I'm gonna say Jameson Cold Brew. I love Jameson Cold Brew whiskey. I am a huge Jameson fan. I actually just ordered, so I ordered 2 bottles of, you're gonna laugh at me. So Ian Somerhalder, is that how you say his name, and Paul Wesley came together from Vampire Diaries and came up with a bourbon. And so I ordered 2 bottles of that. So I'm hoping that will become steadily one of my favorites, my favorite bourbon. But I definitely I actually dedicated Blood Hunt to Jameson Cold Brew. Yeah. don't know if you can see it, but I did. So it, yeah, that one I love. It's so good. It's so good just over ice.
You're a true whiskey drinker. I tried in Scotland so bad to just have it on ice because obviously they got a good variety there. And every time I had to put a little bit of Coke in because I'm like, I'm just not that good. I can't do it. And they'd be like, that's disgusting.
I can sip on whiskey just straight out of a glass with no mixer, and it's just one of my favorite things. It's the only alcohol that does not leave me with a headache. Even wine now leaves me with a headache, and so that's just a bummer. But whiskey doesn't, and it's good in a hot toddy. Like you can do so much with it.
So then my question is, the next signing that we were at together, am I gonna have to be smelling your morning coffee and be like,
Probably
that's
should.
not even coffee?
Probably should. There may be some Jameson in it.
Speaking of marketing, your marketing campaign for Blood Hunt, what are your 3 top tips for marketing for fellow authors? Because it's a lot. So what would you say the strategies that you have found have worked for you?
Make sure that you have all of your branding on point. If somebody sees an image, they need to immediately know that it's yours. And set that up way beforehand before you ever consider releasing. Just make sure that it's set up and ready to go. Facebook ads are a big one. Just make sure you get a good class and really push forward with learning how to Facebook ad correctly. And newsletter swaps are huge. I get responses back almost every time I send out a newsletter. I have readers emailing me back, and it's one of my favorite things to do because I typically send out on Friday, and then by Monday I'm responding to emails. And that's a really good way to connect that I feel like gets pushed to the side for Facebook and other social media when people really do still check their emails and read their newsletters.
So I do have 2 questions coming off of that. In regards to Facebook and Facebook ads, it's a tricky beast for some. What courses did you take that assisted you in growing the confidence to be able to execute it properly?
I took a lot of free courses. I took a lot of paid courses through, I think it's Udemy Academy, something like that. The website that has all of like the online trainings. But I stumbled across a 6-figure author, which is run by Rebecca Hamilton. And I stumbled across her advertising course. And after reading some of the testimonials, I was like, I don't have anything left to lose. Like it was to the point where this was my last year. This is the last year I was going to really push it. After this, I was just going to call it, a hobby and move forward with that. And I took her advertising class, and I saw results really quickly.
Okay.
Within the first couple weeks of using the stuff that she teaches. And so that's when I went back and I took her publishing mastermind course too. And so but her course was definitely the best investment that I had in Facebook ads.
I actually have heard, because I know a lot of people go onto Brian Cohen's. I don't know if you've heard
an Amazon course.
But I have heard people gaining great results from Rebecca Hamilton's as well. So that's it's quite nice to hear again, like another valid testimony. My second question is in regards to newsletters. I know that a lot of authors struggle with it because they're not sure what to do. And some get into the rut where they do author newsletter swaps, whereas basically where, say, through Book Funnel or something like that, you swap newsletters and you advertise somebody else's book. But one thing I stress and I query as to whether you agree with it is that you also have to be giving your reader content where it's not just basically blatantly advertising other books, where they're actually getting something from it, where they're getting to know you personally and what you're up to and where your books are at. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. You have to connect. You have to have that the connection with the reader so that they are right there. It's like a conversation. And it was very difficult for me to overcome that hurdle because I'm like, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. What are we going to talk about? And I get in there and I talk about whiskey a lot. I talk about Skittles. I talk about, I share recipes and I ask for, because I love food. So I ask for them if they have their recipes they can share with me. I make the, and then I make the effort to respond, even if it takes me hours on a Monday. I know that my Monday is set aside to respond because I want to connect and build that relationship, because they're going out of their way to read my books when there are, millions of other books out there that they could choose from. They're going to read mine. And so I want to make sure that I make that connection with them, and that I build that lasting relationship so that we can communicate, just have that communication open. So I know if they have a question, they can reach out directly to me. I'm the only one that responds. Nobody else does. And that's something that I found to be very valuable.
This is my favorite question to always ask. What is your largest goal as an author? What is the dream that you're chasing?
I want to hit New York Times bestseller at some point. That is my major career goal. I also want to I want to publish 100 books so bad, and I want to get to where I have a full, lifelong career as long as I want it, so that I can keep building it. I can show my kids that, hey, you can chase your dreams, you can do what it is you want to do, and you can build a business based on that. And so that has been a huge part of what I do. Also, I make sure that my kids see me working. I make sure that they see what I'm doing. I talk to them openly, not about the content of my books, but about the fact that I do write. And I make sure that I share my goals and my achievements and everything with them.
What do your children think about mom being an author?
They love it. My oldest, when she was in public school, so she did kindergarten and then the first half of her first grade year in public school, she would tell everybody. I ran the book fair at the school, and so anytime I was there, it was like, oh, my mom's an author. She writes books. And then I'd have that conversation, and before too long, the entire school, all the teachers, everybody knew that I wrote. Some of them were reading my books, and so that was pretty neat.
That's so cute. Okay, so I have a new segment. It's called Speed Dating with an Author. So you and I are going to go on a romantic date. I lit a candle. I came prepared. So it's basically just 5 rapid questions. And my first one for you is, what is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
When I first met my co-author in person, Megan, I literally fell over my feet. What made it even worse was I was 7 months pregnant at the time with my third, and I was getting out of the car and tripped on my purse strap and fell out of the car right at her feet. And I was mortified because I'd never met her in person before.
Wait, you are okay, obviously.
Yes, yeah, I'm fine. He's fine. It was mortifying.
But she probably had a heart attack as well.
She did, and then we had a good laugh about it. And I tell everybody, I'm like, yeah, I fell over my feet the first time I met her.
It is kind of funny though. Since everyone's okay, that's kind of funny. What are the 3 words would best describe yourself?
Energetic, motivated, and stubborn, for sure. I'm very stubborn.
What song best describes you?
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna say, this is a hard one.
No. Everyone struggles with this question. I love it. It's why I keep it.
I can tell you that my ringtone is "Don't Stop Believing" by Journey.
We can go with "Don't Stop Believing."
Okay. When I realized what they were actually singing about in that song, I was just like, I still love it. I don't even care.
What are they? Oh, am I gonna have to go back and listen to the lyrics?
You should go back and listen to the lyrics, definitely.
Is it dark?
It's not. It's not overly dark, but it's not super. It's good. I still love it. It's still one of my favorite songs ever. It's that. I also have Uncle Cracker's Smile is the other one that I love. That's my husband's ringtone. So I definitely, you should go back and listen to it.
After this, I'll go and have a listen, but it'll probably corrupt me for the rest of the day. I'll be like, but I always thought this song meant.
Yep.
What is your life motto?
It's a little cheesy, but literally just don't give up. I live by it. I breathe by it. mistakes do not define who we are. Past experiences do not define who we are. And we can grow from literally anything. And that's always been something that I've held really close to myself, is that I'm not who I was, 20 years ago. I'm not the things that have happened to me. I am a strong person, and I can literally just use everything else as a stepping stone to get to where I'm at now.
I love that. That's a good attitude to have, especially in this industry, because
Yes.
there are a lot of hurdles and a lot of steps to take. So that's a good attitude to have.
Definitely.
What is a very unique talent or skill set that you have that not many people know about?
I am an excellent karaokeer. I'm going to make up a word. I love to karaoke. I haven't done it in forever. I used to want to be a singer. That was my thing. When I went into basic, I auditioned to sing the national anthem at our graduation. And they told me that my voice was too country to do it. And so they were looking for a different type of voice. And that kind of crushed me for a little bit. And then I was like, no, I live in Texas. I'm going to own that. So it's still, I love to sing.
Amazing. That's brutal though. Your voice is too country. What is that supposed to mean?
It was really rough. They ended up going with a group of people, and so I felt a little bit better about that because it made me feel less less awful about myself. But yeah, I love to sing. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Amazing. Have you put up any videos or anything like that on your social media?
I have not. I sing to my kids pretty much all day. I sing things that I'm doing. If I'm doing the dishes, I sing about doing the dishes. I am just super random about all of that. So
I can just imagine you. I'm going to my office to write.
All the time. If they ask me a question, I'll sing the answer back sometimes. And then they'll do it back to me. My kids actually sing fights with each other.
Really?
So I think that particular trait carried over. So they'll get into sing battles.
That's kind of cute though, because can you really fight if you're singing to each other?
Yeah, it really is adorable. And no, sometimes the things that they say are not super nice, but usually they work it out by the end of the song.
So what do you have coming up? What is soon to release? Where do we find you? Where do we stalk you? Tell us everything we need to know.
So I have Rise of the Witch, which is the 6th book in my Vampire Huntress Chronicles, is releasing on May 20th. And then after that, in August, Blood Magic will release, which will be the book 7. So it'll be the start of a brand new trilogy within the world. I also have the Accidental Fae, which the cover reveal, and it's going to be a 99-cent pre-order through the pre-order. It's one of the only books I've put up at pre-order for that price in recent times. And so that one will be going up for pre-order May 7th with the cover reveal. And then that one will be releasing in April of 2022. So, wow. And I have my Facebook group, Jessica's Whiskey Thieves. I also have all of my other links on my website, which is jessicawayne.com. I've got some fun giveaways coming up too on my website also. So it'll be good times.
So we'll definitely have to make sure we have subscribed to your email so we get notifications on all of those coming up. That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. I've had a really, really good time.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to love you and leave you. Keep in touch.
All right. Bye.